We're live. Awesome. For those watching in the future, I have to send the email out. Just a minute, her. Hope you're all doing amazing. Sorry that this is late. Had some technical difficulties. Oh, she's probably talking to the microphone, huh? Okay, let's see here. Filters. Bam, select all, message. There's the link. Sorry this is taking so long, everybody. Just skip ahead a little bit, and you can watch it whenever I send out the email. So if you want to all right. I almost forgot to put the link in there. That would have been so funny. Not funny, it would have been bad actually, but that would be just like me. I put here's the link to today's Q&A, and I wrote out all this stuff, and then I forgot forgot the link. Okay. All right. Send. Boom. We good to go. I'm also going to put this in the actual course real quick. There we go. February. You guys spell February. I can't ever spell February. February. Link. Okay. I am putting a link to today's Q&A. Tells the link for today's Q&A will be there as well. Okay. Awesome. Hey, everybody who's watching. Hope you're doing awesome. I see there's a couple people here. Just go ahead and ask your questions. Let me know who you are. Also, let me know where you're watching from. That always fascinates me to see where people are watching from all over the world. And I will start answering your questions. And also, let me know, make sure you guys can hear me okay. And we are all set. It's going to be fun. And after we're done with the people that are live, I've got some questions that were emailed as well that I'm going to be answering. I've actually got 3 here, so that's going to be cool if you want to stick around at the end and hear me answer their questions. But if not, you can just stick around for the questions that you have. And let's see here. I want to make sure I'm not missing the chat. Yes, say hi. Let me know where you're watching from. Because last time we did the Q&A, people had chatted and I couldn't see them. So I just want to make sure. Don't see any chats yet. Yeah, so it'll say on there, it says chat publicly. Well, for me, it says chat publicly as the Anxiety Ninja. Oh, I guess I can hear myself. Good. So that means the sound is working. Okay, sweet. Awesome. Roxanne. How are you, Roxanne? It's good to see you. Well, not see you, I guess. Your chat. Hello, new to the course. What is your take on anxiety medications? I'm from Las Vegas. Awesome. Don't they call that like Sin City? My wife and I have wanted to go there for a while just to do a little gambling and have some fun. We haven't done it yet. I have some notes here. 1 second. Let's see here. Okay, so there are anti-anxiety medication, and then there's actually before that, yeah, so there's antidepressants, which primarily fall into SSRIs, which is really hard to remember, but serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So it's important that I kind of define what these things do before I say whether or not they would be helpful in my opinion. Of course, anything about medication, you definitely want to talk to your doctor or your mental health professional. Obviously, I'm not a mental health professional or a doctor, so of course, this is my opinion. So you've got antidepressants, which again primarily fall into SSRIs, serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and what those things do is very, very deep and scientific and hard to explain. But imagine that each brain cell in your brain is like your hand, and they have like different receptors that pick up different chemicals in your brain. And whenever we're in an anxious state, we have a lot of stress chemicals flowing obviously through our bloodstream and create anxiety. So what SSRIs do primarily is they fill those receptors so that way the stress chemicals can't get in. So they're basically inhibiting the uptake of those stress chemicals. And the byproduct is we gain more serotonin because there's not as much stress that's allowed to enter our bloodstream. So, that can help reduce anxiety, also depression. A couple examples would be like Celexa, Lexapro, Prozac, Paxil, Pexiva. I don't know how to pronounce that. Viberd and Zoloft. The next is anti-anxiety medication. They're basically most anxiety medications are like anti-anxiety medications or like advanced sedatives. So they're basically designed to slow down our thinking, slow down the processes um, in our body. Let's see here. Somebody said a link didn't come through, but uh, yes, he just didn't see it. Okay. So basically, those are commonly known as benzodiazepines, and a few of those would be Xanax, Klonopin, Librium, Valium, and Ativan. The next is antipsychotics. Now, those are used in like really extreme situations, people that have very high levels of anxiety. It's also used to treat conditions like schizophrenia, high level bipolar disorders, or extreme manic depression. So, the positives of anxiety medication is that your symptoms can be quickly reduced. All right, which, who the heck doesn't want to have their symptoms quickly reduced? Also, sedatives, which would be anti anxiety medications, can be used to quickly reduce anxiety, like during a panic attack. So, those work very, very quickly. SSRIs can gradually bring overall depression or anxiety symptoms down to manageable levels, but it is more of a gradual process with the SSRIs, so that it's sometimes hard to see results. So that can be kind of frustrating. Um, Also, uh, sometimes there's the placebo effect, just the fact that we're taking something, it makes us feel as if we're progressing, and that just the cognitive benefit, the placebo effect can sometimes actually make us calm, even if, the medication doesn't even necessarily do anything. So, those are the positives. Now, the negatives are, in my opinion, there's a lot. The cost, it depends on if your insurance covers it, but you may have to pay a copay. You may have to pay the full cost, and that does add up over years. And then there's the codependency aspect. Now, this is just, me. And, if it's not you or anybody else, then that's fine. But I just don't like the idea of being codependent on uh, a pill for my peace. Okay. If I had to have a pill for something else, that's a little bit different. But just to be generally well, I just don't like the idea of having to take a pill. That's just me again. Also, there sometimes are side effects. In fact, some side effects of anxiety medication or just any type of medication used for mental health can actually be the symptoms that you're trying to get rid of. So sometimes you take medication for anxiety or depression, and then there's a small group of people that will actually get worse symptoms. So there's that small chance. And then, of course, if you try to come off of this medication, there could be withdrawal side effects for certain people, which is very hard. And then there's the addictiveness aspect. Sometimes these medications can be very addictive. Also, there's the trial and error, which is often required to find the right dosage. Sometimes you have to take multiple medications. This thing works as a sedative. This thing kind of works to calm you in the long term, and so that can be frustrating. And also, here's my number one problem, you could say, with anxiety medication in general is the focus is on numbing the symptoms and not healing the root. All right, and it's pretty much based on most of the time anxiety medication is focused on the short term, which can be life saving. Okay, I want you to know that, especially in a situation where your anxiety is comorbid with depression or suicidal thoughts. I mean, yeah, like, medication can be life saving. And ultimately, again, it's up to your doctor, it's up to your mental health professional, as far as you. or anybody taking medication. But I think that if we want to recover in the long term, we have to start getting to the root of what's driving our anxiety, what's driving our depersonalization, derealization. And I believe that we can naturally heal our anxiety. We can naturally heal our depersonalization, derealization, independent of having to take medication, at least in the long term. You know, if you need that boost in this, again, I'm not telling you or anybody what to do, but I just, me personally, I would never see anxiety medication as a long-term solution. That's what I would say overall. And frankly, it's not designed to be a long-term solution most of the time, because eventually our brain and our body will build up a tolerance towards it, so it may not be as effective. I actually talked to somebody that was on medication for like 11 years for anxiety. His body actually built up a tolerance for it, and then he actually had some pretty bad withdrawal side effects, and he came out of it, of course. But it's like, I just, if I had a chance to, if I had a chance to choose, me personally, I would go the natural route. So that's kind of my spiel on medication. And a lot of people don't know that it's possible to recover naturally from anxiety, from depersonalization, derealization. We kind of have a drug culture, where the go-to thing is to, okay, what pill can I take? We kind of have this pill mentality, and I get that. But if you can recover naturally from anxiety, from depersonalization, derealization, for all the reasons that I mentioned before, as far as the negatives, you don't have to go through those negatives, and you just have this fulfillment of, wow, I'm totally calm right now because I got to the root. There's just something fulfilling about that. So that's my spiel on medication. Once again, talk to your doctor, talk to your mental health professional. Okay. Very good question, Roxana. So, do you, it's totally up to you, but everything you have in this course will help you naturally recover from both anxiety and depersonalization and derealization. If somebody wanted to use medication in addition to that, that's totally up to them. It's certainly not going to affect it, but it's just a question of, do you want to go through the potential negative sides of medication that I just mentioned? So, anyway, that's my spill on medication. Great question, Roxana. Thank you so much for taking the time to ask that. And hello, everybody who's watching and who will watch in the future. I love you. You're amazing. And it's an honor to get to talk to you. And guys, I don't know everything. I just want you to know that. But I do know a couple things. So I'm just going to tell you what I know to be true and hope that it helps. Hold on, let me take a sip of my tea. Good old tea. Okay. Feasible situation, and also glutton, um gluten or glutton has commented. Very good to see both of you. And also, if anybody has any questions, just make sure to leave a comment. I would love to answer those for you. No question is out of bounds, except for, don't ask what this thing is on my neck. It's an Adam's apple. Like, I've had like little kids before be like, "Why is there a bump on your neck?" And even some jerk one time on my YouTube comment said, "Why don't you get that thing certified?" Okay, and I don't understand getting better. I'm working 37 hours a week, playing sports at the weekend regularly, and I still don't feel any better. Why am I not seeing improvement? That's a very good question. So, number one, if you can take a second real quick, just tell me what your symptoms are, because you said you don't feel any better. What specifically are you feeling? I'm assuming that it's depersonalization, derealization, but tell me all the symptoms that you can think of that you're experiencing that kind of communicate to you that something is off. Because one of the things that we're going to talk about here in a little bit, and I've got some pretty exciting stuff to share with you guys, is different states promote different symptoms. All right. And a state just simply means the condition of something at any one point in time. All right. So we can access different states. As you guys know, there are actually, is it five? I always confuse if it's four or five. There's actually five different states, generally speaking, that we can be in. And each state has different symptoms associated with it. So if we can know the symptoms, then we can know, okay, well, you're in this state and we need to get you out of this state. All right. So yeah, so tell me what symptoms you're experiencing. That's going to be the first step here. I want to make sure that. Okay, you just responded. And also, Gloatin, hold on, buddy. I'm gonna get to you in just a minute. I just want to answer feasible situation. Love that username, man. Okay, I feel like I don't exist all the time. Like my self and personality is gone, totally detached and cut off from myself and the world, no emotions. Okay. So, first of all, I'm sorry to hear that, for sure. So, emotional numbing, feeling disconnected from your personality, feeling disconnected from existence, that would be depersonalization, derealization, which means that you would be in a traumatized state. Which all that simply means is that we're overwhelmed beyond our ability to cope. I mean, every human being at some point has entered a traumatized state, right? But for most people, the traumatized state doesn't last more than a few seconds, a few minutes, a few hours, a few days, a few weeks. Up to a month is typically the maximum time that most people would stay in a traumatized state. But for 2% of the population, we remain in a traumatized state most of the time or all the time. And our individual nervous system decides to help us cope with that traumatized state by making us feel numb and disconnected. And that the purpose of these feelings of depersonalization, derealization, they're actually called dissociative symptoms, is to create distance between us and the source of what's making us overwhelmed, right? But it's really annoying. It's really frustrating because whenever you're dissociated and whenever you feel numb and you're trying to live life, right? It's really, really difficult. But what happens is 2% of the population have a series of stressors in their lives that are keeping them in a overwhelmed state. That's what a traumatic state means. It means that you're overwhelmed beyond your ability to cope. It means that your level of stress has exceeded your ability to cope, right? So what happens is we experience all of these really negative emotions. All right. A lot of times we experience stress symptoms in addition to dissociative symptoms. And we're like, oh my gosh, these symptoms feel so bad, and they're so hard to deal with. And we actually are overwhelmed by the symptoms, which actually ends up keeping us in a traumatized state. That's one of the stressors that keeps us in a traumatized state is obsession with the symptoms that we're feeling, and we believe all sorts of things about them. We believe that they're going to get worse. We believe that we're always going to have them. And because it's so hard to live day-to-day life with these symptoms, we just assume that the symptoms are the problem. But what's actually the problem is the state that we're in. Okay, hear me out real quick. This totally changed my life, all right? Certain symptoms are appropriate for certain states, right? So I'm talking to you, feasible situation, and whatever your name is, that's your username. Anybody who's experiencing depersonalization and derealization, that's appropriate for a traumatized state. Now, I didn't say it's comfortable. I didn't say it's good, right? It feels horrible, but it's appropriate. Just like exhaust smoke in a car is appropriate whenever the engine is turned on. All right. And if you want to turn off the exhaust smoke in a car, you simply need to turn off the engine. All right. So our nervous system is actually what's producing stress symptoms and also trauma symptoms, which would include depersonalization, derealization. So we need to focus on changing our state, right? Because if we can get out of a traumatized state, which means we're overwhelmed, right? Then the symptoms that we don't like are just like exhaust smoke in a car. Once you turn off the engine, the exhaust smoke will automatically stop. But the reason why so many people have such a hard time, and guys, this was me for a long time. The reason why they have such a hard time getting over uh, depersonalization, derealization, especially, but anything related to fight or flight response, stress symptoms, is because they're symptom focused and they're not state focused. All right. If you can change your state, you can change your symptoms. And the truth is, if you're trying to get rid of depersonalization, derealization, you're trying to get rid of something that actually is appropriate for the state that you're in, right? Just like for to give another example, let's say that I was in a car accident and the airbag deployed, right? That's appropriate right? To have the airbag deploy if I'm in a crash. Okay. And depersonalization, derealization are actually exactly like a car airbag because they're designed to create distance, right? To help protect us from being so overwhelmed, right? So, yeah, how do you change your state? I'm going to get to that right after I say this. So, let's think about this using the car airbag example, and I use it because it's just perfect. All right. Having depersonalization and derealization disorder is like driving around in a car with the airbag constantly deployed. It's uncomfortable. It's really, really hard to drive. You're just like, like, what's going on? But whenever you experience depersonalization, derealization in a normal context, it's going to be just for a moment, right? Like, let's say during like a car crash, to help shield you, to help protect you, to help numb you, create distance between you and being more overwhelmed. But what happens is we're not supposed, let me say this, we're not supposed to experience the feelings all the time. We're only supposed to experience them in the context of a life or death situation. But we can access a traumatized state and stay there, even if we're not in any sort of physical danger, if there are a series of stressors that are constantly keeping us overwhelmed. All right. So, once again, we don't need to get rid of depersonalization and derealization. They are not a problem, right? It's like, do we want to get rid of an airbag? Of course not. That airbag is there for our protection, but we just don't want to be driving around in a car with the airbag deployed whenever we're not in a car crash. All right. Sorry, it's taking me a while to process. That's what I meant to say earlier. There, okay. It's been 5 months, and it all started when I had a panic attack from weed. Okay. Well, I'm very, very sorry to hear that you went through that. And I actually started to experience depersonalization and derealization from marijuana as well. I actually um, had a panic attack, and there's a video on my YouTube channel called Depersonalized, and I talk more about that. So, you're experiencing memory issues, you're experiencing blurred vision, right? And constantly zoning out, inability to concentrate. Okay. So this goes back to what we're saying is those symptoms are appropriate whenever you're in a stressful state or a traumatized state, right? So what needs to happen is you need to go from being symptom focused to state focused, all right? If you can change the state, which is the condition of yourself, of your nervous system, of your body in the present moment, then these symptoms will self-correct, right? So even though these symptoms feel bad, they're actually appropriate for the state that you're in, which brings a lot of clarity and it brings a lot of encouragement because you're like, oh, nothing's wrong with me. Like, for example, if a tiger was over there about to attack me, right, it would be hard to focus. It would be hard to concentrate, right? And there may be shaking. My vision would be sharpened, right? Because I'm going to go into fight or flight mode. I'm not going to be able to sleep if there's a tiger over there. Well, guess what? Your nervous system right now is responding exactly as if there were a tiger trying to attack you. That's the state of your nervous system right now. So your symptoms are appropriate for the state that you're in, right? It's the same thing with feasible situation. It's the same thing for anybody who experiences stress symptoms, fight or flight symptoms, dissociative symptoms, etc. Those symptoms are appropriate for the state that they're in. Okay. So, how do we change our state? Well, that's what the whole course is for. The 10 pillars of DPDR is basically going through your life and figuring out what is contributing to me living in a traumatized state, right? Because depersonalization, derealization will never manifest independent of being in a traumatized state, which is where we're overwhelmed beyond our ability to cope. Now, that doesn't mean just because we're overwhelmed doesn't mean we're in fight or flight response. You can actually be dissociated and also be totally calm depending on which stage of the traumatic process you're in. I have a series of videos on this in my course where I talk about how stress develops in a trauma. Make sure to watch that to go into detail. But nonetheless, we're overwhelmed in our nervous system, okay? And because we're overwhelmed and we're not coping, our nervous system thinks that we're dying, even though we're totally safe, and thus it says, okay, they're overwhelmed. Hence, they must be being attacked by a tiger. Let's make them numb and disconnected to help them cope with this, right? So if we want to get out of these symptoms, we have to get into a state that's not overwhelmed. And then these feelings of depersonalization, derealization, stress symptoms, fight or flight symptoms, they will automatically self correct, right? As well as the negative emotions and a lot of these negative behaviors surrounding the symptoms that you have. All those things will self correct if we can change our state. Okay, so um, changing our pace. This is huge, right? And also, guys, anybody who wants to ask a question, make sure to ask it. Um, so, changing our pace, make sure that you're not rushing around. Make sure that you're not going here and there. And I know it's easy to do that, all right? But slow down your pace. You know, like for example, all right, you can't see it, but like here's my tea right here. So here's a hasty paste, right? And what that's going to do, because you're moving your body so quickly, is that's going to probably activate stress or fight or flight symptoms, right? Because what we do with our body is what's communicating to our nervous system what state we should be in. Okay, so here's a different approach: a slower pace. Taking a second to enjoy the taste of the liquid. I'm looking at the cup. But sometimes whenever we get into stress states, fight or flight states, traumatized states, because our mind, because our body are in these fight states, right? Or maybe even we're numb. We we tend to rush things. All right, we tend to not be aware of the pace that we're going at, and because of that, that's one thing that could be signaling to your nervous system that you're in some sort of danger as you're rushing around. So slow your pace. Next thing is huge. Everybody has to do this. um, Slow your breathing. I do this every single day, guys. Like, obviously I walk around, pretty calm. I do have stressors that come up. Okay. But one of the things that happens for me is I get really tight in my chest and my stomach, and my breathing is like this. Right? And sometimes it gets even fast, right? And I have to cognitively become aware of that. And what I do is I just kind of breathe in slow through the nose. I hold it for a couple seconds and then I exhale through the mouth. There's a lot of different breathing techniques that you can do, but I also make a noise whenever I exhale. So I go every time. It makes me feel so calm. And breathing is just so pivotal, but you have to become mindful of it, right? Because a lot of times we start to breathe shallowly. I can't say that 10 times fast. We start to uh, increase our breathing to the point where we're almost hyperventilating, but it's all just subconscious because we've done that for so long. So you have to become conscious of your breathing whenever you're in a traumatized state, a stressful state, and you start to feel the symptoms associated with that, right? Um, Another thing is, and I talked about this on the last Q&A a lot, and I will continue to talk about it because this is huge. Relax your body. All right. The the biggest thing that's communicating to our nervous system what state it should be in, whether it be a calm state, stress state, fight or flight state, or traumatized state, is are we tense and constricted in our body in the present moment, or are we relaxed? All right. And let me give you an example for that. And Roxanne, I'm gonna get to your question. It's a fantastic question. So let's say right now I was to sprint up and I was to run outside of my house and I was to just start sprinting all around my neighborhood. What would happen, right? My heart would start pounding. I would start sweating, right? I would have all this energy. Why? Because I moved my body quickly, all right? And I communicated to my nervous system that I must be under some sort of threat and need this extra boost because I'm moving my body really fast, right? So, what we do with our body in the present moment is what's communicating to our nervous system what state that it should go into, whether that be a restful state, which is where we want to be in, or a stress state, which is preparation for fight or flight response. And then there's fight or flight response. And then there's a traumatized state, which is where we're just totally overwhelmed, right? So if we can learn to manage our state, we can stop the process and we'll never even get into a traumatized state where we start to feel depersonalization and derealization. So I just had an interview with a guy named Noah Thomas, and he has a YouTube channel called Big No No, and he's got like 100,000 subscribers. This dude is like one of the most healthiest people I've ever seen. But anyway, we were talking, and we were like, you know what? A lot of living a healthy life, when that mentally, physically, emotionally, is preventative, right? It's like, I know a lot of you right now. You have all these symptoms, and it's so uncomfortable, but a huge key to recovery is thinking, what could I have done to never even gotten into these different states to begin with, right? So, for example, getting a good night's sleep, drinking enough water, just the typical stuff that we all know of, but calming the body, slowing our pace, slowing our breathing. I do those things, if anything, to be preventative, to prevent myself from even having the chance to get into fight or flight mode or a traumatized state. So become preventative, become very intentional and preventative, and you won't even get into these states in order to experience those symptoms that you don't like. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and take a break. There's more stuff that I could go on. Um, so, uh, is a stressor in your life deals with your health, or if interesting. Hey, Angel, maybe Roxanne, maybe restate the question, but you said if a stressor in your life deals with your health. Okay, so maybe you're asking the question, what if you have a stressor that's related to some sort of health condition? Well, nonetheless, even if you have a tough health situation, we still determine how we respond to that. All right. And we can still have an attitude of calm even despite having a tough health condition, and we can still keep ourselves from entering into a stressful state, fight or flight state, or a traumatized state due to how we respond to whatever that health situation is, right? So I understand that if you have a negative health situation, it's much easier. It feels much more natural to become anxious, to become traumatized, which means we're overwhelmed. But if we can control our state despite the presence of that health situation, we can still remain calm. We can still keep our nervous system calm, right? So if that answers your question, great. If not, ask it maybe in a different way. Good question, Roxanne. It's great that you guys are asking this. Roxanne, okay, got it. Thanks. Sweet. Thank you. Yay. Yeah, and let me know, if this is helping you. Ask all the questions, guys. I mean, we only do this once a month, so now is the time. I've got some time shaved off for this, and I just want to pour into you guys as much as possible and really help you. If you have any specific questions, anything related to depersonalization, derealization, stress, trauma, anything like that. And also, if you want to know my workout routine of how I get so incredibly buff, no, that was a joke. Wasn't that funny, was it? Okay. I am working out though. I'm taking a lot of protein. I'm trying to gain some. My wife said that I was fat because I have this little flap on my belly now, which I've never had before. Okay. Um, a person that has a name that it's in a different language. Hello, it's good to see you. You said, do you have problems with memory? Did you have problems specifically feeling like everything that happened years ago? Yes, 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 yes. 1,000 times yes. My memory, oh God. Guys, whenever you enter into a traumatized state, your memory sort of fragments, right? It's like a plate that kind of breaks into 1,000 pieces, and it's fully repairable, okay? But whenever you enter a traumatized state, that's just what happens. And the part of your brain that normally puts like timestamps on memories, like a beginning, a middle, of an end, that goes offline. So that's why we can experience like PTSD triggers where we see something that reminds us of a past trauma and it feels like it's right now. Well, that's because once again, whenever we were experiencing that trauma, let's say that it was even years ago, right? The part of our brain that would put it as a past event went offline, right? So that's why we have to do things to show our nervous system that, hey, I'm not still in that traumatic state that I was in years ago. All right. Even though this trigger resembles that state, I'm not currently in that state. Right. So, one of the things that you can do, of course, calm your body, change your state, all the things we're talking about, is you can say out loud, I survived. All right. I survived. Okay. You may have had a panic attack due to a bad drug experience. You could have had just a panic attack in general, or you could have been just totally calm and then you started to feel DPDR and all that stuff. But nonetheless, you need to communicate to your brain and nervous system that you survived it, because your brain and nervous system sometimes get behind. They still think that because you're in a traumatized state now that you must still be under some threat that's already passed. All right, so just say out loud, I survived, I made it. All right, and that kind of helps get your brain online that you're moving forward in life. All right, and of course the main thing that you can do is change your state to calm your body, do the things that we've been talking about. I've got some more things to tell you actually here in a little bit. Okay, very good question. But yeah, so memory, yeah. So this is what I tell people, right? As far as like, you have difficulty concentrating, you have difficulty remembering things. Okay, if you're in a stressful state, a fight or flight state, or a traumatized state, your brain and nervous system are operating as if there was a tiger trying to attack you. So let's think about this. Let's say that there was like Tony the tiger was like 30 feet away, right? And it's kind of growling at you like, "Arr, arr." Would you be able to think very clearly? Would you be able to sleep very well? Would you be able to remember things very well? Of course not, because that's not the state that you're in. All right. So again, what you're experiencing, difficulty concentrating, difficulty remembering, it's appropriate for different states that we can enter into. And once you get out of those states and once you get into a calm state, your memory is going to go back to normal, and your memory, your concentration. Now I will say this, a lot of people that end up experiencing DPDR are very deep thinkers, all right, and uh they're they internalize a lot. All right. Can anybody say amen to that? All right. Um, we overthink everything, right? And because of that, sometimes there's so much on our minds that it's hard to concentrate in general, even if we're in a totally calm state. So I will tell you this, even with me being totally calm, which I walk around totally calm most of the time, I would say 95% of the time, and that's taken a lot of work, but you can do the same thing. But even when I'm totally calm, because I'm a deep thinker and I'm an HSP, which means I tend to internalize a lot. I have a lot on my mind. I have a business, a family, all that stuff. Sometimes it's hard for me to concentrate. But whenever I was in a traumatized state, whenever I was in a fight or flight state, a stress state, or even if I entered into a stress or fight or flight state right now, it would be triple hard to concentrate, triple hard to remember things because that's appropriate for those states. So, okay. Gloaton says, is it a bad idea to do sports if it tricks your nervous system into thinking that you're stressed? Okay. I'm in a state now where I'm feeling okay, but the thoughts about my brain fog and memory make me loop back into a dissociative state. Okay. Very good question. But on the other hand, you said today was the first time I noticed myself not obsessing on how everything looks. Yay! That's awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. Hey, man, let me tell you something. Having a good day whenever you've been in a traumatized state, feeling DPDR and stuff is huge. Hey, somebody just gave me a thumbs up. Sweet. I don't know what I said. That's great. Okay. But but anyway, so think about this, okay? And your name is in a different language, so I don't know what it is. So you said you have the thoughts about feeling brain fog and your memory, and it basically overwhelms you, all right? And then you start to dissociate, which is the like button look lonely. Oh, Zachary, thanks, man. It's good to see you, Zachary Robinson. Hey, by the way, I am going to answer your question at the end, my friend. Okay, you emailed me. Thanks for emailing me. Oh, another person like, yeah, sweet. It's thumbs up all day. Okay. You guys are so awesome. Okay, Angie or ANGYLFLD. I got to read this real quick, guys, because this is awesome. I bought the course 2 weeks ago, and I'm really getting better. Like 90% of my physical symptoms are gone, but I still have existential thoughts. Well, you are in luck because we're going to talk about existential fears here in a little bit. But bravo for 90% of your symptoms going away. That's freaking amazing. That's why I do my course. That's why I do my channel, is to see those results in people. And that makes me bubble up with joy. So, yay. So, congratulations. You're totally on the right track. If you can get that much in 2 weeks, ha, ha, you're going to knock this thing out. All right. You're doing awesome. Good job. Okay. So, going back, um, this person had said when they think about brain fog and memory, it makes them overwhelmed, right? It puts them in a traumatized state. And in a sense, you could even say that it's kind of like what this person's experiencing is kind of like a PTSD trigger. Is just the thought of something, right, can give them like a flashback, can kind of put them back in the state that they may have not been in for years, etc. Okay, so here's what you need to do. Whenever you start to think about these things, a lot of your behavior, the outflow of the state of your body in the present moment, right? Whatever state that your body is in. So you think about these things. Like I'll just give an example, guys. I just want to be vulnerable. This is like, us get going deep. That's the purpose of these monthly calls. So I've had some people that have said and did some things to me that were really, really, really messed up, guys. I'm talking like it sent me into years of depression. And of course, I don't want to get into the details and everything, but I'm fully I've fully overcome it now, but it was very traumatic and depressing. But the other day, not the other day, this has been like a month, I think. I saw a person who was involved in a lot of bad stuff that happened to me, and it quickly put me in not a traumatized state, but a highly stressed and highly emotional state, right? I couldn't sleep. My thoughts were racing. I started to I kind of go like this, like I get really tense. And because I've invested the last few years of my life, especially into learning how to process emotion, process different states, and get back down to a calm state, it only lasted for a couple days. And then what I did is I allowed myself to experience the emotion. I didn't try to fight it, run away from it, numb it. I just said, "Oh, this feels like crap. Okay, just let it flow, right? Let the emotion in." And I also understood that although these symptoms were uncomfortable, they don't have to change my state. I determine the state that I'm in. All right. So what I did is I focused on relaxing my body, deep breathing, all right, slowing things down, all right, making sure that I'm staying healthy in all areas of life. And then those thoughts were no longer the memory of what happened, the thoughts, the emotions, all of that stuff went away, right? So what's happening for you, my friend, is you're experiencing these emotions, these thoughts of brain fog, of memory issues, and you've trained yourself to respond with resistance because you're like, oh no, what if that happens again? And you enter a traumatized state, right? So you have to retrain yourself to not respond with resistance, which is usually by tensing your body and constricting, right? So it's going to take time, but for any of you guys that are having things that trigger you to go into a stressful state, um, a traumatized state, etc., you've probably trained yourself and created what's called a procedural memory, which is it's a subconscious response that whenever we think about something or see something or hear something that we associate with something negative, like maybe we had a panic attack and we are at the same place where it happened, or maybe it's driving or just something. Well, if we don't create a new response, that will be our default response indefinitely. And we don't want that. So we have to take the time every time that we start to go into these states whenever we're subjected to these stressors, calm our body, calm ourselves down, and retrain. Sorry, I keep hitting that. And retrain ourselves to respond with a calm response. And then guess what? It will then be a subconscious response to respond with calmness. So then, speaking specifically to you, whenever you think about the memory issues or the brain fog, all that stuff, you'll now have this response of total peace. And then all of a sudden, that won't be a stressor anymore. It's only a stressor because of our response to it, right? Right. For example, one last thing, and I want to answer questions. There's no such thing as a stressful job. I know that that's really hard for people to hear, and I want to clarify. Yes, there are jobs that are more challenging and have more drama and more difficulties. And I've worked jobs that no human being should work on, and it literally was stressful. But what I mean by that is what makes something stressful is the way that we respond to it. All right. Like 90% of our stressors in our lives, I believe this. May, between half and 90%, I'll say that, of the stressors in our life would be eliminated if we would stop resisting, right? If we would stop tensing our body and resisting. That's the reason why we have so many stressors in our lives, and all those things build up, and it makes us in a traumatized state, which means that we feel depersonalized and derealized once we enter that state. So, so anyway, so yeah, so that's all I have to say about that. What's traumatic for one person is not traumatic for the next person. Like two people could be in a car accident, one person can be traumatized and the other person may not be, depending on how they respond to the car accident. All right, a natural disaster is the same thing. You know, 10,000 people can go through a natural disaster, and let's say that half of them have really strong coping mechanisms for stressful events, but the other half don't. Well, the ones who cope with that stressful event in a healthy way, maybe they don't even enter a traumatized state, right? So it's not even a traumatic event for them, but it is a traumatic event for the people that didn't respond with relaxation, with changing their state, right? So yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm a nerd for this stuff. Okay, lots of questions. Okay, let's see here. Amir, that's the name. Okay, cool. Okay. Um okay, Roxanne. What's up, Roxanne? Okay. Why isn't DPDR more known like panic attacks? People look at me crazy when I try to explain it. I grew up super anxious kid and I felt this off and on since I was a little kid. Yeah, it's very, very common for kids to develop dissociation as a coping mechanism because we can't really self-regulate until we're about 10 or 11, and that's if we had a healthy environment. Self-regulate means the ability to calm ourselves, right? And I grew up in a home that was amazing on one hand, but then also my parents had a very, very nasty divorce. And obviously for privacy, I won't get into that too much, but it really shattered our family. All right. And my environment that I grew up in did not promote uh, calm to begin with. But then add on to that, I wasn't taught how to self regulate, how to calm myself, right? I wasn't given those tools. So what did I do? I turned to addiction, right? I turned to being anxious and stressed all the time, right? That's what I'm saying. Our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are determined by the state that we're in, okay? So if we have healthy coping mechanisms for stressors in our lives, then we won't even enter into these states. And thus, we won't have to have a lot of these addictions, which can be like substance abuse, alcohol abuse, different things like that. It could be an eating disorder, all these things that we do to help regulate us, to help get us back to feeling normal, to get that dopamine and serotonin release. If we can calm and learn how to self regulate, especially as children, then it would just totally change our lives. But the reason why depersonalization, derealization is not as well known as panic attacks, there's a lot that I could say about that. Number one, panic attacks and anxiety. Oh, okay, let's say this. Anxiety and depression, last time I checked, are the number one mental health issue in the world. Okay, we're talking millions and millions and millions. I can't, like 17% of the population, don't quote me on that, but it's incredibly high. How many people experience anxiety, which will include panic attacks under anxiety? Okay, but then think about this: depersonalization and derealization are experienced by half of all people during a traumatic state, but for most people, DPDR is only going to last a few seconds. Like, let's say they get into a car accident, or let's even say they lose a loved one, and there's a few weeks where they're just so overwhelmed they start to dissociate, right? But 98% of people will leave a traumatic state in a month or less. Okay. Only 2% of the population will continue to feel depersonalized and derealized after a month has passed, which is what's technically called the stupid word disorder, depersonalization, derealization disorder, even though technically I hate the word disorder because there's nothing wrong with you. So let's think about this for a second. If you go to a mental health professional or if you go to a doctor, 98% of the time, they will have never experienced depersonalization derealization disorder. They may have felt the feelings of DPR for just a few seconds. They probably didn't even know that it was depersonalization derealization. I have a friend, he's actually a pastor, and we talk all the time, and I started to tell him about depersonalization derealization. He said, "Oh, I've felt that before." Is that whenever you feel like I looked in the mirror and I felt like I was looking at a stranger? He had a situation. He was like, "Is that depersonalization and derealization?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, I felt that." So, Roxanne, a lot of people experience these feelings, but it's only for just a few moments, and they don't even know what it is. So, thus, they move on with life, and thus, the only people that could spread awareness of this are the 2% of people that experience the disorder. But even with that, depersonalization derealization is highly misdiagnosed. It's very difficult to find even a mental health professional that will be able to properly diagnose you, right? Because they've never experienced it. 98% of them have never experienced it. So anyway, so for all those reasons, and then it's very hard to communicate the feelings. PDR disorder just kind of gets swept under the rug. And we have to create more awareness. Whereas panic attacks, you know, that a lot more people experience those, so thus there's a lot more funding for research, and then there's a lot more stuff known about them. So yes. All right, very good question. Zachary Robinson says, "I need to head off to work, but I'll watch the rest after." That sounds awesome, bro. SC says, "It feels like half of me is sleeping and I'm waiting for it to wake up." Okay. Well, I've heard, different stress symptoms or even dissociation kind of described as like feeling like you feel high, you feel tired, uh, all the time, things like that. So, but of course, if you're really concerned, go get checked out by a doctor. Get a clean bill of health for sure. And hey, Lucas, and hey, Gloaton, and everybody else who's asked questions. I'm gonna get to them just a second. I'm gonna start drilling through these guys. Sorry, I'm very passionate about all this stuff, and I get kind of on rants. But I know this is helping you because I remember whenever I was experiencing DPDR disorder, it would have been very nice to have somebody talk about this stuff because there's very few people that actually know anything about DPDR disorder, stuff like that. And I don't know probably even 20% of what there is to know. But anyway, yeah. So you feel like half of you is sleeping and you're waiting for it to wake up. I don't know if that's like metaphorically speaking or if it's literally speaking. But yeah, definitely get checked out by a doctor if you're really concerned. But what's most important, SC, is that you focus on the state that you're in. Make sure that you're in a calm state, right? And then you can determine if what you're experiencing now is associated with an anxious state or a traumatized state, right? This is what gets a lot of people. Some of us are going to experience these subjective symptoms, which is maybe just how our individual body, mind, emotions are responding to these different states, right? And one of the mistakes that we make is we develop health anxiety because we've got this weird symptom that we just can't explain, and we start to fight that symptom. We Google it all the time. We obsess over it. But that ironically actually keeps us in the state that's probably producing that symptom, right? So, for example, like whenever I get into an anxious state, I don't know why this happens, right? But I have this scar on my head from somebody throwing a rock at me, actually, whenever I was like 10 years old. And it just starts throbbing and it feels so weird. And for years, that would start happening, but I didn't realize that it was the byproduct of being in a stressful state, which I think it's just because all the blood's flowing and things like that. I still don't know to this day, but I don't care because it's associated with a stressful state, right? So, it's like get out of the state that is probably producing the symptom that you're worried about, and then if you still feel half of your body is like it's asleep, well then go get checked out by a doctor or mental health professional. It's probably nothing even then, nothing serious. But I'm saying, like 100% of the time with me, all the symptoms that I was worried about were simply the byproduct of being in a stressful state, fight or flight state, or a traumatized state. And once I got into a calm state, all the symptoms went away. To this day, I've never been diagnosed with a serious disease, knock on wood. I've never been diagnosed with some serious mental or physical condition. It was all just stuff that I feared because of the state that I was in, or symptoms that were misinterpreted as dangerous. All right. That's some good advice right there. That this is primo stuff, guys. It's taken me years to figure this stuff out, but yeah, don't be symptom focused, be state focused. Change your state and you will automatically self-correct the symptoms that you don't like, right? You're not going to hear that from 99% of people, all right? Everybody's going to focus on the thoughts, the emotions, the behaviors, but again, certain thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are appropriate for certain states. So you need to fix the state, all right? Okay. Yeah, it does seem like there are certain areas like going to my car that seem to push me back into the same thought every time. So you could almost say that this is almost like a phobia in a sense, because you get in certain situations and you have an associated response of stress and being overwhelmed whenever you're exposed to that situation, to that thing. So to get out of phobias, it's the same exact thing to recover from PTSD triggers. Is you have to learn to change your state when you're exposed to those various triggers. And it's going to take time because your default subconscious response right now is to respond with tenseness, with being overwhelmed. And that's usually primarily tensing your body. But that's why you have to learn to relax your body, change your breathing, change your pace, do all those things that we talked about earlier. And if you do that over enough time, that will no longer be a trigger anymore. It won't trigger you. Right. Just to give you guys something that's kind of funny, I actually am working on a phobia of police. I freaking love the police. The police, like I have a best friend who's actually I have two best friends that are policemen. Like I don't break the law. Well, I do speed sometimes. I mean, nope, I never speed. Um, but I developed back whenever I was having severe panic attacks, severe anxiety. I was pulled over by a police officer one time, and he actually passed me and he went on to somebody else, but it sent me into a panic attack because I was walking around in a stressful state. This was like, I think 10 years ago. And I had to get out of my car. And this was like 10 o'clock at night. And I'm like hyperventilating on the side of the road because I thought this police officer was pulling me over. So I developed a phobia of police officers. And I'm realizing now every time a police officer gets behind me, I still have this default response of getting really worried and anxious, and my heart starts pounding and thoughts racing. So, so what am I doing? I practiced this today. There was a police officer that I saw. Every time that I do that, I use the ABC technique, which I teach in the Calm Pillar. I say, even though that I feel this stress right now, everything is okay, exactly as it is. And then I take a few deep breaths. And then I tense my body real quick. And then I relax it. I usually tense my entire body, or you can do progressive muscle relaxation from the head to your feet or from your feet to your head, either way. And it's working. I'm getting less stressed when I'm around cops. But I just started this like a week ago. Okay. Um, okay. Lucas Ulrich, are you rich? Give me some money. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, that's he probably. Uh, I got made fun of. My last name's Hardgrave, and people said all sorts of horrible things about my last name. Sorry. Your name's awesome. Ulrich. Well, I am not rich. Hi, I'm Lucas from Austria. Awesome. I think I'm mainly experiencing DR after I had a panic attack like 2 months ago. I'm new to your course and not quite ready to accept all that is happening right now. I want to change my life in one day, in one and no, that's not possible. Okay, I see. So I keep giving up, but I know I have to take my time and be patient. Today was actually a fairly good day, and I could see myself hoping again. Thanks for your effort you put into that course, and I hope that I can apply the things you suggest. Okay, listen to me, everybody that's watching this now. Lucas, listen to me, all right? And everybody who will watch this in the future. The worst thing that you can do for your recovery when you're in a traumatized state is to get a giant to-do list, okay? I want to be very clear. The 10 pillars of DPDR recovery are not meant to be done in a week at a time. All right? And what that means is address one stressor at a time. Look at me, my friend. One stressor at a time. Because if you try to do too much, if you try to fix everything in one day, that is going to keep you overwhelmed, right? And the number one stressor that you need to, or rather, the number one thing that you need to work on is calming your body using the ABC technique to eliminate resistance from your life, because whatever we resist persists, and resistance brings suffering. All right, like I said, between 50% and 90%, depending on the person, of the stressors in your life are created because of unnecessary resisting. So thus it's actually self-inflicted suffering. We suffer because we're resisting, we're trying to control things that we can't control. We're getting stressed out for no reason. So thus take a week, a month, however long you want to, and just do the calm pillar. Just make that your only focus. And then whenever you're starting to see some results with that, which should come relatively quickly, at least for me it did, and a lot of people it does. But if it doesn't, that's okay too. You just keep doing it. Then move on to the next pillar, and then move on to the next pillar, and make sure, guys, that you go all the way to the last pillar, right? Even if you see results and you're excited, keep going to the 10th pillar, because the goal of this course is not just to make you feel better for a little bit, right? I want to make you feel better for life. I want you to learn what's causing you to enter a traumatized state, so that way you don't enter a traumatized state ever again, and thus you don't feel DPDR. You have to enter a traumatized state, which means you're overwhelmed, before you can feel DPDR. And everything in this course is designed to identify the biggest stressors that cause us to enter into a traumatized state. So to answer your question, Lucas, one stressor at a time, my friend. Don't look at everything you have to do in the course and think, oh gosh, I have to do this all in one day. No, 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 no. One stressor at a time. Everybody start with the calm pillar. That is the primary thing that you need to do. And for a lot of you, just by learning to relax your body and deep breathe and let everything be okay exactly as it is, that's going to eliminate enough stressors for a lot of you to stop feeling DPDR for bigger and bigger amounts of time. And then it's just a matter of figuring out what other stressors are left in your life that are contributing to an overwhelmed state. Awesome question, Lucas. You the man. Okay, Gloatin. Sorry I'm asking so many questions. Don't be sorry. Don't be sorry. I'm glad you're asking questions. I love this, man. I feel like I'm an eagle. Caw, caw. Oh, that was weird. I'm just kidding. My wife doesn't like my corny humor. Okay. But I just want to ask you for your advice on this. I become afraid of going to bed because I'm most anxious when I'm trying to sleep. Now it takes me 3 hours to fall asleep. Any advice? Yes, I have advice. Okay. So I have a section on sleep in the course. I believe I do. If I don't, I need to, but I'm 99% sure I do. A few things. Number one, insomnia is appropriate for a fight or flight state or even a stress state, which is basically we're preparing for fight or flight response, and then a fight or flight state, which is where we're fully prepared, our heart's pounding, and we're just ready to go to confront a perceived threat, and then a traumatized state. Insomnia is appropriate for those states. Okay, that's what you need to understand is for the time being, don't expect to get a good night's sleep. And I know that that's hard to hear, but if you expect to get a good night's sleep whenever you're still in a traumatized state, then that's going to be one more stressor that's going to be keeping you in a traumatized state is you have all these expectations. Instead of having expectations in general, have desires, or better said, preferences, right? Have this mentality when you go to sleep that, okay, right now I'm processing a traumatic state, which is going to take time, it's going to take effort, going to take patience. And thus, I prefer a good night's sleep, but I don't expect it, right? If I get a good night's sleep, amen. Great. But if I don't, let it be okay. All right. And what that's going to do is that's going to dismantle this resistance that you start to feel anytime that you think about sleep, because you're resisting the possibility of expecting sleep and not getting it. So whenever you transition sleep from an expectation to a preference, all of a sudden, if it doesn't work out, it's okay. It was just a preference, right? If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, I'm okay too, right? And this is good for life in general. Don't have expectations, have preferences. Um, Secondly, there's a lot that I could say for sleep. Number one, get out of a traumatic state. Focus on calming your body. Identifying the stressors in your life, processing emotion, forgiveness, having the right mindset, diet, all the things that I cover in the course. But start with the calm pillar. That's what's ultimately going to get you a good night's sleep. Is whenever you go to sleep, you're in a calm state, right? We need to be in a calm state in order to have a proper night's sleep. We can still get to sleep in a traumatized state, but it's going to be a lot harder. And I'll tell you this, that was like one of the hardest things for me with sleep. Whenever I was experiencing DPDR, I would toss and turn for hours and hours. Like I would get like 1 or 2 hours of sleep a night. And the only way that I would fall asleep was pure exhaustion. I would play Temple Run on my phone. And that was because guys, I didn't know about states. I didn't know about calming the body. I didn't know about any of the stuff that I teach you guys. I did not know it. All right. So I was trying to recover by trying to fix depersonalization derealization, which don't need to be fixed. They're appropriate for the state I was in. I was trying to fix fight or flight symptoms, stress symptoms, right? So the next thing is wait until you're tired to go to sleep. All right. And you need to be exercising every day because that's going to help you get to sleep like a big time. Or whenever I started exercising, oh, guys, it was amazing. That's not only good for sleep, but it's just good for general, mind, body wellness because you experience even stress symptoms like your heart's pounding, you may be sweating, but it's associated with running or jogging, right? Or exercise. So thus you start to develop this peace with experiencing certain symptoms, which translates into your recovery because it teaches you, okay, just because I'm experiencing this symptom doesn't mean that I need to freak out, right? So, so wait till you're tired to go to bed, and if you're laying in bed, and you can't sleep, this is a game changing mindset that worked for me. Don't don't try to get sleep, try to get rest, which rest would be you're laying in bed, your eyes are closed, you're doing your best that you can to relax your body, and you're getting rest. All right. Is it as good as REM sleep? No, but it's better than nothing. Right. And if you consider that to be enough mentally, then you're going to be better off than if you think if I don't fall asleep and get REM sleep, then I just can't go on that next day. That's going to stress you out. But if you say, okay, I I prefer to get deep sleep, but I'm content with just getting rest, which even if I just lay in bed for 8 hours and just close my eyes and relax my body, that's good enough for me. then that's going to help you start to become more calm when you enter the bed. All right. And there's a lot more that I could say. Don't eat anything, like an hour before bed. Turn off half the lights in the house an hour before bed. Make sure that the temperature is good, like 66, 67 degrees. Is great. There's a lot to sleep, that we could talk about. Okay. Um, okay. Angie LFLD said, I also got a panic attack from weed. I'm sorry to hear that. Is this normal that I get anxious even from the smell of weed? Yes, it's very normal because the amygdala in our brain takes in information through our five senses, including smell. And then how we respond whenever we experience these senses is what's going to determine if our amygdala sends a peace signal to our nervous system or a stressful signal to our nervous system, which would then activate stress symptoms, fight or flight symptoms, or a traumatized state. So you have a phobia of marijuana, the smell of marijuana, because you associate that with a panic attack, right? And whenever you smell the smell of marijuana smoke. So what you have to do is you have to realize that um, there was a Russian psychologist. What year was it? Like the 1800s? I can't remember. Named Ivan Pavlov, and he did an experiment. He did a set of experiments with dogs, and basically he hooked up these these tubes to their salivary glands. And what he would do is he would bring out food. He would ring a bell. Okay, and then he would realize that the dogs associated that bell with food and they would start to salivate, right? Right. And this is where it's called a Pavlovian association. All right. So what Dr. Ivan Pavlov did is he took something that was previously neutral, that had no association, a bell, and he gave it an association to those dogs of food, of eating, right? Well, right now, the smell of weed to you has an association of panic, right? But it took time to condition yourself to have that fear-based response to the smell of marijuana. So thus, you simply have to take that time to recondition yourself to have a peaceful response to the smell of marijuana. How do you do that? Whenever you get around the smell of weed, use the ABC technique. It's that simple, right? It's going to take time, but you allow the symptoms to be there. The A is for allow, right? And then you say the statement, even though I fear this smell of marijuana, it makes me uncomfortable. Everything is okay exactly as it is. And then you B is breathe. Because whenever you slow your breathing, it's going to help calm your nervous system. Because remember, what we do with our body in the present moment is what communicates to our nervous system what state it needs to be in. Okay. So the C is calm the body. All right. Calm your body. You do that through progressive muscle relaxation. Start with your feet, tense your feet, relax them, tense your legs, or you can just do your whole body and then relax it. Do that every single time that you're around marijuana smoke. And guys, this works for any phobia, no matter what it is. And you will recondition yourself to have a calm response. And then it's no longer a phobia. It freaking works. I promise you it works. Okay. Good question. Um, okay. And the only reason why I'm taking so much time to answer these is because I know that this is going to help a lot of people. These are fantastic questions, guys. I love you. You're amazing. All right. So much fun. I had this too. Closing my eyes made me feel very anxious. Mostly the silence, sleeping meditation sessions really helped me with that. Yes. Yeah, I sleep to the sound of a fan. I cannot sleep unless I have a fan going. There's this funny thing. There's like a meme and it says, one does not simply sleep without a fan on. It's a reference to the Lord of the Rings. Anyway, yeah, so the ambient noise is fantastic for sleep. Okay. Yesterday, this is Lucas. What up, Lucas? Yesterday, I woke up really anxious because I was feeling a slight uh, tinnitus in my left ear. Um, guess that's because of my overwhelmed state. Hope it doesn't get worse, but try not to monitor all the time. Yeah, I mean, if you're worried about it, just go to the doctor for sure. And But yeah, definitely get out of a traumatized state, get out of a fight or flight state, a stressful state, which we do that by calming ourselves. You know, if you're just tuning on, make sure to watch the whole video. We've talked a lot about that. I have more to say as well here in a second. But yeah, change your state. And if the symptoms that are uncomfortable that you're afraid of still are there when you're totally calm, right? Whenever you're not dissociated at all, you're not in fight or flight response, you're totally calm. Well, then it's probably nothing, but just go get checked out by a mental health professional or a doctor. It's that simple. But yeah, okay. Felicia, Feliz Navidad, Felicia Navidad. What's up, Felicia? Greetings from Germany. I know one statement that's German, and it's "Wie geht's?" I think it's like "What's up?" Awesome. Hold on, mouth stretch. After I talk for a while, I have to stretch my mouth. Felicia Meister. Greetings from Germany. I also got DPDR from weed. Gosh, a lot of people start experiencing DPDR from marijuana. That's yeah. It's there's a I've been watching a lot of interviews. There's a debate actually between it's actually on the Joe Rogan podcast, but there's a guy who wrote a book basically saying he doesn't agree with weed at all, and then there was another guy who is actually I think a psychologist or a doctor, and he is obviously for medical marijuana and stuff like that. But they were going back and forth. But one of the things that they agreed on is, for whatever reason, which I'm not an expert on this, but marijuana today in the United States is much more potent than it has been in times past. And what tends to happen is people smoke marijuana. This is what happened to me. Oh, sorry. People smoke marijuana for the first time. They have no tolerance for it, and they're smoking a much more higher potency of marijuana, of THC in the marijuana. So thus, they are more likely to react with panic, and especially if they don't understand panic attack symptoms and dissociative symptoms. It's like it makes them more likely to respond with panic, and they remain in an overwhelmed state, etc. So that's really what happens. That's why so many people are experiencing DPDR when they smoke marijuana, is because it's more potent than ever, and it's because they do too much too quickly, right? That's what happened with me. I smoked way too much, and it overwhelmed me. So anyway, so if you're, I'll say this real quick, if you started to experience DPDR due to marijuana, my suggestion is that you never touch marijuana again. And I just have to say that because, it's there's a chance that it could cause you to feel dissociated again because maybe you just don't have a good response to it for whatever reason. And for some people, they can smoke marijuana for years and years, and then suddenly they start to feel stressed out and dissociated. I don't know why it happens. I'm not a scientist, but it's just better, at least for recovery. Definitely don't touch this stuff. It's just my opinion. Obviously, when it comes to medical marijuana, talk to your doctor, stuff like that. But yeah, I wouldn't touch this stuff. Okay. Um, yeah, so I also get very anxious around weed. Okay, yeah, so the same thing of what we talked about, Felicia, as far as creating a new response, right? Because right now you smell weed or you get around it and you associate it with dissociation, with stress, and all those things, and thus it's very easy for you to enter a anxious state, a traumatized state, etc. So so the key there is to use the ABC technique. Just like I told Lucas, I believe it was Lucas. Yeah, use the ABC technique every time that you're around weed, every single time. And if you forget once, it's okay, but just keep doing it over and over again. You will recondition your brain and nervous system to not associate weed with panic and with feeling overwhelmed. Good question. Awesome. Roxanne, SC, I have felt that same thing. The world doesn't even seem real. It's like you're still in a dream and need to wake up. Yes, that is definitely what a dissociated state feels like. Lucas, always when I'm waking up and still lie in bed and close my eyes, my mind goes crazy. It's like I'm still dreaming and random thoughts occur rapidly with no connection at all. Okay, here's another tip. All right. Don't lay in bed. If okay, I'll say this. If you're struggling with depersonalization, derealization, which I assume you wouldn't be on this call unless you were, don't lay around in the morning. I remember this so specifically during my recovery is whenever you're transitioning from a sleep state to an active state, basically as soon as you wake up, there's a cortisol release, which is a stress hormone in your body. And if you don't use that stress hormone and you're laying there and your body's weak and you've got these stress chemicals flowing, it's going to be natural to focus on stressful stuff and to feel overwhelmed. So it's tough, guys. I mean, you got to develop some resilience, but get right out of bed, right? Get right out of bed and start your day. Turn on some music is the best thing you can do in the morning. Some relaxing music or just some cool music. Get in the shower, end it with 15. It takes a while for that to fully come back online, and I can't tell you scientifically why that is necessarily, except for, you're obviously getting into a calmer state. And whenever you're in a calmer state, it promotes mental clarity, things like that. But with that being said, it's just in my experience, it's very, very normal for people to even be relatively calm, but yet maybe they're still struggling with brain fog for, weeks or months. I don't want to put a time frame, and I'm not saying that this is going to be you, but just don't let it bother you. Just know that the more that you focus on calming yourself, the more that the symptoms that you don't like will go away, as far as the symptoms associated with stressful states, traumatized states, etc. So, yeah, very normal, very normal. It's annoying, but don't let it bother you. Lucas says that really freaks me out sometimes, and I wonder if it's got to do with my DR. Sometimes I think that may come from something else that I have, another condition. Okay, what did you say that before that? Oh, okay. When you're laying in bed and closing your eyes, your mind goes crazy and you feel like you're still dreaming random thoughts. Well, obviously, like I always preface, if you're ever concerned about anything mentally, physically, emotionally, if you're really concerned about it, go to a doctor, go to a mental health professional. Sometimes getting that clean bill of health will be great, but then again, be careful about which professional you go to. If you're gonna go to a professional related to DPDR, they need to be they need to have a focus of trauma, in my opinion, because general, even cognitive behavioral therapy, talk therapy, it's not gonna do much. I mean, you can heal some from DPDR with talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, but think about it, cognitive, right? Stress and trauma are non-cognitive. They're being produced from the automatic nervous system, right? So what really needs to happen is we need to shift our state, and a mental health professional who's trained in trauma is going to understand that. They're going to focus on the body versus focus on the mind, the emotions, and the behaviors. But nonetheless, if you're really concerned, let's say about a physical thing that's happening, just please go get checked out by a doctor. But again, I can tell you from my experience, Lucas. I experienced this, and this is like my life, guys. I mean, I do have a job, but it's a part-time job. Mostly, what I do is coach. I work on answering questions by email, YouTube videos, talk to you guys, etc. So I'm dealing. I say dealing. I want to make sure I love this, but I'm communicating with people most of my day that are experiencing symptoms due to traumatized state, due to stressful state, etc. And whenever you wake up and you're in a traumatized state, again, you get that cortisol release, the stress hormone, and you're feeling overwhelmed. Also because of your body being weak, right? You're still waking up, so it's very, very, very normal to feel dissociated if you just lay around in bed after you wake up. And especially if you didn't get a good night's sleep, right? You're going to feel fatigue as well. So the more things that are there that could be making you overwhelmed, it makes it more likely that you may feel dissociated, right? It's almost always a series of stressors that happens that causes us to enter a traumatized state and dissociate, right? So, for example, I could be totally calm, right? But then let's say that there are two or three stressors that happen. All right, or maybe it's one stressor, then it builds up two, then three, or maybe they happen all at once. And then because those stressors are there, I go from a calm state to a traumatized state. And then I start to dissociate, right? I start to feel dissociated. So, what do I need to do to get out of that traumatized state? Cope with those stressors or eliminate them altogether if I can, right? And if I can do that, then I can get out of that state, get back into a calm state, and then all of a sudden those symptoms won't be there. So don't freak out, Lucas. I'm convinced. Obviously, uh, you need to talk to a professional if you're really concerned. But I'm convinced that what you're going through is very, very normal, and nothing to be worried about. Once you get out of a traumatized state, once you're getting better sleep, you can expect this to go away. But get out of bed as soon as you wake up. That's very, very important. Okay, Roxanne, tips on how to keep reminding yourself to relax your body throughout the day. I've already felt a difference with doing this, but I feel like I forget, uh, and my body is all tense again. Very, very, very good question. I'm glad you said that too, Roxanne, because I had a list of ways to change your state, and we got through about half of them. So here's a question. I'm actually going to do a YouTube video about this, I think, tomorrow, because this is so powerful. It's changed my life. Um, how do we what's a good way to remind us to check to see if we're tense and constricted or if we're relaxed, so that way we can use the ABC technique. Generally speaking, it's just about using mindfulness and bodyfulness, which I'll talk about in the calm pillar, being aware of your thoughts, being aware of the state of your body. So it's almost like a self-discipline thing. But if you notice yourself starting to experience the symptoms that are associated with certain states, right? Ask this question. This one question has changed my life. All right. And I still, every now and then, will ask this. Am I in physical danger? Am I in physical danger? Say it out loud. And then what you'll realize is 99.9% of the time, we're not in any physical danger. So thus, the state that we're in, whether it's a stressful state, whether it's a fight or flight state, or a traumatized state, is inappropriate. We're only supposed to enter those states whenever we are confronted with a life-threatening danger, or our friends and family member are confronted with a life-threatening danger, right? But the problem is that our brain and nervous system are really old, and they haven't upgraded to the safe conditions of the 21st century. So we can easily enter these states even if there is no physical danger. So we have to have something that signals to our brain and nervous system that it's not appropriate to enter into these states. And we do that by changing our state. Using the ABC method is the best. And then, of course, the rest of my online course talks about, forgiveness, diet, emotions, fight or flight energy being stored in the body. Maybe we need to do the shaking exercises. There's all sorts of stuff. But whenever you ask that question, am I in physical danger? What that does is it causes you to self-evaluate. And if you teach yourself to ask this question, anytime that you start to experience your stressful symptoms, am I in physical danger? All of a sudden, you'll start to realize, oh no, I can relax. There's no tiger attacking me. But it's crazy as human beings, um, how often got some on my mouth. Yeah, I don't know what that is. But it's crazy as human beings how often we default to stress and become overwhelmed. And it's subconscious, right? And a lot of these responses of entering these states when we're exposed to various stressors happen as children, right? Because we're not taught how to self-regulate as children. And thus they carry into our adulthood, but we don't even notice it because they're subconscious. So yeah, so just generally self-discipline is great. Practicing mindfulness, really keep relaxing your body. Okay, it said my connection was unstable. I hope that it's back now. If it's back, somebody, well, just let me know it's working now. Hope it's working now. All right. Um Okay. Can somebody just tell me it's working real quick, just so I know? Just say it's working, please. Yay! Thank you, Angela Flood. Your name's awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. So, let's get back to this. Great question, by the way. So, hi, Ernest again. Lucas said the trauma that caused my panic attack was quite hard to take. I'm not sure if I can get out of the traumatized state without some help of medicine. Well, that's totally up to you and your doctor, or mental health professional. I don't know if you were here at the very beginning of this session, Lucas, but I talked about some of the positives and negatives of medication. I personally recovered completely without medication, and I believe that it is possible. Again, for you, Lucas, I think the primary focus should be on using the ABC technique. Make that like your only thing that you work on. I think that that'll help you not to feel so overwhelmed, for sure. And then go through the rest of the pillars in the 10 pillars of DPDR recovery. Um, but yeah, no, I understand. And that's one of the reasons why people jump to medication. It's totally understandable. They just want to feel better as quickly as possible. And that's, that's your decision. I'll leave that totally up to you. Obviously, I can't tell you what to do on that. But I would always encourage somebody to consider a natural recovery from DPDR in the long term, for sure. So anyway, ultimately, it's up to your doctor or your mental health professional for sure. Don't listen to me whenever it comes to medication. Just giving that little disclaimer. Okay. You're awesome, Lucas. Keep going, man. I'm proud of you for getting this course, for sticking this out, man. You're gonna overcome this. Like, don't even think you're not. Just trust me. All right. You don't believe that you will, or you believe it's gonna be tough and all. It's gonna take time and effort, but you have all the right tools. All right. I believe in you. So Felicia says you've already talked about having insomnia. I'm not having trouble with falling asleep. And even while my DPDR was pretty severe, I always was able to sleep. Fortunately, I'm afraid of dreaming. Okay, that's a great question. Um, so that would be, you could say, sort of like a phobia, right? Because maybe you've had bad dreams, maybe you've had nightmares. There's all sorts of reasons. So that's where you would use the ABC technique anytime that you think about dreaming. But I want to say this for you: use visualization. Visualization is incredibly powerful, and I want you to visualize yourself having a dream, right? Whatever dream that you're afraid of, but yet you're totally calm. It doesn't bother you at all. And what you can do is you can train yourself that even if you have a bad dream, that you don't respond with resistance and with stress. All right. The ABC technique, of course, use that as well, but visualization especially is going to really, really help you with that. Um, yeah, because I mean, we all have bad dreams every now and then, and I understand it can be very, very scary. But at the same time, just because we have a moment where we enter into, like, say, a stressful state, a fight or flight, or even a traumatized state, doesn't mean that we have to stay in that state. We can very quickly come back down to a calm state. I mean, we are going to have negative things that happen in life. I mean, there's no way to escape that being a human being, but yet we don't have to remain in these states, right? We're supposed to experience a negative state for a little bit and then come back down to a calm state. But if you're experiencing DPDR all the time or most of the time, it's because you're staying in these states, right? Which I did that for 2 years of my life. I would say about a year of that was constant in a traumatized state. And then a year of that was kind of going in and out of a traumatized state once I learned how to recover. So, yeah, good question. Lucas, thanks for letting me know it's working. Okay. Um, okay, existential fears. All right, you guys have talked about that. Um, let me talk about existential fears. Okay, so there's a lot that I could say about existential fears. Currently in the course, I have a video where I talk about this, and the most important thing is to not step into the ring, the boxing ring, metaphorically speaking, with these existential questions um, whenever you're in a traumatized state. Because, the subject of existence, I think it's beautiful. Like I personally have religious beliefs that give me a sense of purpose and hope as to why we exist. But yet there it can be a little bit overwhelming for some people to think about that, even if you're not in a stressful state, a traumatized state, etc. So especially if you're in a stressful or traumatized state, and then you think about, questions that have been there since the dawn of humanity, yeah, of course it's going to be overwhelming. So the key is, okay, so we'll call this a negative thought. All right. Remember, your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are the byproduct of whatever state your body is in the present moment. So you'll notice that whenever you start to experience these existential fears, you get real tense. Oh no, what is this? What is that? What about this? Blah 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 blah. And you get all tense, right? I used to do the same thing. So you need to learn to change your response. And instead of going down that rabbit hole where you start to question and question and question and question, you get stuck in your head and you internalize everything. You just need to say, you know what? I'm not in the state where I can address these fears right now, or these questions. All right. Maybe whenever I'm out of a traumatized state, I can revisit these existential fears. But as of right now, I just have to, I'm not even going to step in the boxing ring. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change my state. And then the byproduct of that is I'm not going to be so stressed and so overwhelmed. And then weeks or months down the line, maybe I want to address these existential questions, and it'll be okay. It may be a little uncomfortable, but it won't be totally overwhelming because I'm going to be in a calm state, right? And use the ABC technique, but here's a statement that you can add, which I always tell people, and this works. I promise you it works. The A in the ABC technique is allow, and the way that we allow the symptoms to be there, or rather allow them to be okay. Don't resist them. That's the purpose of the A in the ABC technique. I want you to say this. I want you to say, even though I have these existential fears, life is beautiful, or you could say existence is beautiful, and everything is okay exactly as it is. All right. Even though I have these existential fears, life is beautiful, existence is beautiful, and everything is okay exactly as it is. Then you take 2 deep breaths. And then you calm your body. You can tense it and constrict it, or I've gotten to the point where I can just totally relax it even without constricting it, because I've done the ABC technique 50 million times. Right? And what happens is whenever you say life is beautiful, and whenever you say everything is okay exactly as it is, you're saying, despite my unanswered questions, despite my fear toward existence, whatever that may be, I'm not resisting, right? I'm allowing those questions to be there, right? And I'll address them at some point, but they're okay remaining tense and uncomfortable. But my response to those questions is going to be to change the state that I'm in and come back to them later, right? And not resist them while I'm in an already uncomfortable state. All right, that's it, my friends, as far as existential fears. I wanted to talk about that. Felicia says, I don't like that state. I'm getting hearts. I'm getting some hearts. That's good. That means, I'm assuming that means that you're loving what I'm saying. Yay! Yay, sauce. Okay. Um, okay. I don't. Felicia says, I don't like that state because I don't have any control. I, I simply don't feel comfortable when thinking that I will dream something. I got you. So think about this though, Felicia. Um, before you started to experience DPDR, according to your own words, you loved sleeping and dreaming, right? Okay, so let's think about this for a second. What needs to happen? you need to get back into the state that you were in before you started to experience DPDR, and then your sleep and dreaming will self-correct, right? For the time being, right? I suggest using the ABC technique visualization, and that's even going to bring results right now, even while you may still be in a traumatized state. But in the long term, right, the course, the 10 pillars of DPDR, especially the calm pillar, are going to be what gets you out of a traumatized state. And thus you start to love sleep again. You start to love dreaming again, right? Because your fear of dreaming, your inability to sleep, your lack of love for sleep is simply the appropriate response to the current state that you're in, right? So, yeah. So what you're experiencing will self-correct once you get into a calm state. And that's going to take time. I'm not saying it happens overnight, right? But you have all the tools in this course for it to happen as fast as possible. So, do not worry, my friend. All will be well. Whether you're experiencing brain fog, inability to concentrate, insomnia, pounding heart, DPDR, all of these symptoms that just suck, they are appropriate for the state that we're in. And thus, we don't need to worry about trying to correct these symptoms. We need to focus on getting out of the state that's producing the symptoms. I'm serious, guys. This stuff, it will change your life if you can get out of a symptom mentality and get into a state mentality where you focus your whole life on remaining in a calm state, which is primarily done through relaxing your body. Man, it gets very simple. Whenever we get into thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, gosh, it is so confusing, right? And there's a lot I could say on that, but I'm gonna behave and keep reading. Okay. Um, Even though I don't have any nightmares, and if I have one, I always fight the nightmare, not even afraid of it. I miss loving dreaming. um you said you fight the nightmare, right? So resistance is what's bringing a lot of suffering, a lot of activating your sympathetic nervous system, producing stress symptoms, fight or flight symptoms. And if you hit that overwhelm point, you may even start to feel DPDR. So don't resist. Use the ABC technique, and use visualization. Visualize yourself having a great night's sleep. That's going to help to calm your nervous system. And it's going to take, several times of the ABC technique and visualization to even see short-term results. So don't give up. Keep doing those things. Um, the person that has a channel name that's in a different language. Um, oh wait, you told me what was your name? Oh, you said it earlier. I forget. I'm sorry. At the start of this experience, I had weird and freaky dreams. Some of it is because I stopped smoking weed after years of daily smoking. It comes around at some point. Now I don't even remember them like I used to, which I attribute to a more relaxed state while going to bed. Awesome. Well, that's fantastic. See, there's a perfect example. Was it Sal? I forgot your name. I'm sorry. Um, yeah. So there you go. He changed his state, and then the dreams and the things, the negative dreams, things like that, is from what I'm reading, self corrected. Lucas says, guys, I'm proud of all of us. We're going to make it. Thanks, Jordan, for your encouragement words and all of your advice. Aw, hugs. You're awesome, Lucas. Peace. Angela gave me a heart. Felicia gave me a heart. Aw. Roxanne Derodiak? Did I say that right? I get $1,000 if I said that right. This is really helping. So thankful that I found your channel. Aw. Well, thank you guys so much. It means the world to me. Yeah, you guys are amazing. Like, I know that obviously this course and my YouTube channel is there to help you guys, but I live for this stuff, man. Like, this is what gets me out of bed in the morning. Obviously my family and and other things, but like nothing gives me a greater sense of purpose of knowing that my negative experiences have been turned into positive experiences for other people. It just seriously, like, I'm not beyond feeling depressed sometimes and feeling discouraged. In fact, sometimes it happens on a, like every couple weeks, I'll have moments where I just feel like depressed and sad. But then I've taught myself how to get out of those states pretty quickly. And I'll start to read you guys' comments, like the ones you just left: Roxanne, Felicia, Angela, or Angie, Lucas, everybody that's commented and said amazing things. And all of a sudden, I'm like, man, like I've got a responsibility, and I've got a purpose, and part of that is to help people, and it's very rewarding. And once you guys get out of this state, a lot of you are already starting to. Um, you're going to help other people, and you're going to be much more effective than 99% of the people in their lives at helping them, because you've been where they are. You know exactly what they're going through. So start your YouTube channel, make your online course, write your book. Like you've gone through one of the toughest things that you could possibly go through as a human being, which is feeling dissociated. And you either have come out on the other side, some of you are already starting to see amazing results, or you will. It's only a matter of time. And so let that be part of the vision that helps you get out of this and motivates you to keep trying the things that are in this course, is knowing that there are people that I'm going to help once I get on the other side of this. And that is a huge motivator, or that was a huge motivator for me during my recovery. Was, you know what, like I've been scouring the internet for hours and hours and hours, watching all these YouTube videos, and pardon my French, but it was all a bunch of crap for the most part. Like like people weren't even recovered. There was so much confusion about this disorder. It was very discouraging. And I was like, gosh, and I even took a course. Actually, it was a book, and it ultimately didn't help. And this was supposed to be like the authoritative book on DPDR recovery. And for privacy, I'm not going to say what it was. And ultimately it was overall helpful, but it didn't address the things that needed to be addressed to get somebody out of a traumatized state in the long term. And that's why I created my course, because it wasn't out there. um so anyways, what I'm saying is I knew that I had a responsibility to rise up and to spread awareness and to get to the bottom of this stuff, right? So that way other people don't have to suffer. And guys, I need your help. Like we're a team here. Like people say all the time, well, is it okay if I do YouTube videos or write a book or make a course about DPDR recovery? I know that you have all that. I'm like, dude, what? Yes. Like like yes, not only do I suggest that you do it, I'm like asking you, please do that. Like we have to turn the tide on this thing, and it's not just going to be a few people. Like currently, like our culture does not know about DPDR disorder. Like we're just now figuring out even about PTSD. PTSD is a relatively new term. They used to call it shell shock, and we used to think that it only affected like war soldiers. And then all of a sudden, statistics were showing that women that experienced abuse and rape were experiencing PT or shell shock symptoms. And then we're like, okay, wait a second, maybe more people are experiencing what we call PTSD today. And then now we're realizing you can experience PTSD due to all sorts of situations that are not typically associated with what we associate as a traumatic event, like going to war or a hurricane, loss of a loved one. For example, a panic attack due to smoking weed, right? That's not the traditional um, post traumatic stress causing event. But yet, that's one of the most common events that I see in talking to thousands of people. Is people are overwhelmed due to a bad experience with drugs or having a panic attack for some reason. So anyway, so there's so much education that has to happen, guys, and I need your help with this. So so get recovered, take the course, please take all the 10 pillars. Don't skip around on the videos, please. Please take your time with it. Start with the calm pillar, but please go through every single video, even if you feel better, which you will very quickly. But take all the videos, and it will serve you in the long term. And then take that information, repackage it, put your own spin on it, and then do your own stuff. And then we'll turn the tide on this thing. We'll get awareness out, we'll help people recover, and we'll get them actually accurate information instead of confusing information that only brings more misdiagnosis, more confusion. So sorry, that's my little a little rant there at the end. Felicia says, and because of that, I don't understand why only so few know about DPDR. She was responding to what I was saying about something about how we're getting awareness or something like that. But anyway, yes, I know more people should know about this. So Lucas says bye. See you next time. Later, Lucas. He might have already dropped off. You asked some amazing questions. Everybody did. Felicia, The person, is it Sal? I'm gonna. Sorry, I forgot your name, man. Um, Amir. I went and scrolled up. Amir, that's your name, buddy. Okay. Yeah, so anyways, okay, real quick. I have a few questions, and if I already answered these questions in one way or the other, I'm not going to answer it just simply because, we've already taken all this time and it's been 2 hours. Um, but Tiffany Lawrence, my question is, what do I do about checking in or self-monitoring? These were emailed questions, and thank you for asking this. And if you guys have any questions for next month's live Q&A and you want to email me, email theanxietyninja@gmail.com. Um, Alex Shearer says, I was able to help someone experiencing DPDR for the first time with your advice today. Thank you. Oh, man, that means the world. Thank you for sharing that, Alex. That's huge. I bet you felt so fulfilled too, like just seeing somebody else helped that's going through something so horrible when most people probably wouldn't be able to help. So good job. I'm proud of you. Thank you so much for sharing that, Alex. That is huge. Pound it. Awesome. Um, so Tiffany Lawrence says, my question is what to do about checking in or self-monitoring. I know you have covered this a bit, but I'm still not understanding what I should be doing about it. The ABC method and the calm pillar is working really great. As I stated in my first email, she had emailed me telling me about how amazing the calm pillar was. Um, but I will feel normal do, doing my daily activities, and all of a sudden I remember I'm experiencing DPDR and check in, and then I have the feelings slash obsessive thoughts again. It happens constantly. Okay, got you. So, so you're doing great, and all of a sudden you remember DPDR. Okay, and then it triggers you to enter a dissociated state. So, um, we'll see you later, Roxanne. It's good seeing you. Great questions, by the way. Uh, okay, so here's the thing. Checking in is appropriate once you're in an anxious state, we'll just say. All right, not necessarily even a traumatized state, but just a stressful state. It's appropriate to check your symptoms. Let's say that somebody was in a car accident and they enter obviously a stressful state, and they're checking their body. They're looking to see if there's any wounds and make sure they're okay, and there's that period of self-evaluation. That's normal. That's healthy whenever you're in that state. You just had a car accident, right? And sorry if that triggers anybody if you have had a traumatic car accident. It's just an example, but forgive me if that may be triggering, but it's just I think there's a lot of parallels to cars, like the airbag, stuff like that, that I use as examples. So, but anyway, but um if you're not in a stressful state, if you didn't have a car accident, you wouldn't be checking in all the time, right? So what I used to try to do in my recovery is I used to try to fix the checking in. Like, what do I have to do when I start checking in? Oh, let me just distract my mind, right? That's what I need to do. Let me just keep my mind distracted all the time, which is the worst advice that you could ever get for anything related to DPDR, stress, fight or flight, any of that. It doesn't work. It's not dealing with the root problem, which is the state that we're in. It's just like putting a band-aid, right? Um, so anyway, here's the thing, Tiffany. So you you have these thoughts, and your response to those thoughts is what's causing your stressful state to elevate to the point where you become dissociated. You go from stress to fight or flight all the way to a traumatized state, which is where you're overwhelmed. And this can happen quick, within a tenth of a second. So it's if you try to address the behavior, you're actually going, it's going to be counterproductive. You have to address the state that these thoughts are putting you in. Whenever you think about these things, you have this response of going into a stressful or traumatized state, right? So checking in is appropriate for the state that you go into. So instead, and we've already talked a lot about this. I don't know if you're watching live, or I don't think you are actually, but what needs to happen is you need to focus on, in that moment, making sure that you're using the ABC technique, which I know you said you're already using that for other things. But the reason why it's a little bit tougher to use the ABC technique is because this response of quickly going into stress, fight or flight, traumatized state. It's kind of hardwired into you right now. So it's going to take time to create a new response. Okay, so use the ABC technique for checking in, um, but just understand that the more time that we've had these responses to different stressors, sometimes, not always. In fact, for me it wasn't, but for some people it will be. The harder it's going to be to undo those sometimes, because it feels so natural to just respond with resistance, because that's what we've always done for so long. Um, but for me, I don't know why, I just was really good at using this technique. I mean, I didn't create what's in the technique. I mean, I just pulled, I mean, breathing. I mean, I didn't create breathing, you know. I didn't create relaxing your body. I didn't, you know, the statement, let everything be okay exactly as it is. I actually got that from a guy named Bill Harris. He created this thing called HoloSync, which is really cool. It's like this thing you listen to, and it goes to like alpha, beta, theta waves or whatever. It's pretty cool. So check that out. But anyway, but nonetheless, it it's like, okay, for most of my stressors, I just had to use the ABC technique for a couple days, it seemed like. However, I'll give you a good example. So like this cop thing, right? I love police, but yet I have this phobia of police, and I've talked about why that is earlier in the video, because I got pulled over and had a panic attack years and years ago. It's been like 2 weeks and I still get a little stressed and tense whenever I get around police, right? Why? Because I've had this phobia for over a decade, right? So, because even if it's just been months or whatever, or weeks or months, that you've trained yourself to respond with resistance to those thoughts, just understand that it's going to take everybody different amounts of time to recondition ourselves. So forgive yourself, be a little bit more easy on yourself, give yourself time, and just say, okay, you know what? I'm doing the right thing. It's just going to take time for it to become a reality. So that's my first advice. Keep doing the ABC technique for these thoughts. Secondly, understand that there also could be other stressors in your life that are making it more likely for you to quickly enter a traumatized state, right? So that's where, you know, the course is going to be fantastic for that. Also, the last pillar, where I talk about prevent, where you ask the which is about preventing DPDR, where you ask the question, the five whys. Well, why do I feel this? Okay, well, it's because of this. Well, why is that happening? Well, it's because of this. Well, why is that happening? Well, it's because of that. Well, why is that? You go through the five whys, and in the end, you will have the right problem, and then you can develop the right coping solution. So that's where it's going to be on an individualized basis. So anyway, great question, Tiffany. And by the way, thank you so much for your encouragement, Tiffany, by email. It's been fantastic. It just, you guys letting me know what helps you the best in the course. It's just fantastic for me, because I'm always trying to make it better. All right. Ali Coates has a question. During recovery, let me pull this up. Is it normal to still question yourself if DPDR is still present frequently? I find myself asking, is this weird? Does he or she look weird? Is this real? These thoughts freak me out and make me anxious. But at the same time, I know everything is okay. Any tips on how to combat these thoughts? Do they start to fade? Excuse me. Even though I know I'm doing better and better, I still feel traumatized and fearful of DPDR coming back. It also feels like it's still lingering and makes me sometimes questions my reality. Any tips on how to get myself out of this anxious cycle? Thanks for everything you do. Awesome. Well, thank you for your question, Allie. Very, very good question. So I want to answer the second question first, which is, even though you're feeling better, you still feel fearful of DPDR coming back. Okay, so here's what you need to understand. You're in control of DPDR. DPDR is not in control of you. I'll say it again. You're in control of DPDR at any given moment, except for the exception where there is a legitimately life-threatening situation, or maybe a new stressor that comes into our lives that we haven't had a chance to properly cope with it. But even then, we quickly get out of that state. We learn to cope. We don't remain in a traumatized state or a stressful state. So because of that, we can keep ourselves from remaining in a traumatized state, right? or a stressful state because we have taught ourselves how to self-regulate, which is what the calm pillar and the whole course is about. Teaching ourselves how to process emotion, how to keep ourselves calm, how to keep ourselves in a calm state, right? So you don't have to have the fear of DPDR coming back because you understand now that it's not this subjective floaty force that may or may not be there, and it's people see DPDR and a lot of anxious symptoms as like a disease or something. They see it as outside of their control and it makes them afraid. But once you and that's due to a lot of bad information out there. But once you realize that depersonalization, derealization are trauma coping mechanisms, they show up at the point that stress develops into psychological trauma. Then all of a sudden you're like, oh, snap, snap, crackle, and pop. Was that funny? Oh, yeah. I should be a comedian. I have a gift with humor. um, but anyway, we realize, oh, snap, crackle, and pop. If I can keep myself out of a traumatized state, then I can keep myself out of a dissociated state, right? So it's very simple. It's not. It takes time. It's not easy, right? Necessarily to get yourself out of a traumatized state because it takes trying something new. It takes time, effort, and patience. But yet, it's very simple, right? This whole thing is very, very simple when it comes to stress, fight or flight, or trauma and its associated symptoms. There are 5 different states that we can get into, which are, sorry, 4 states: totally calm, stressful, or you could say an anxious state, which is basically like putting fuel in a car to prepare us for turning on the engine, which would be fight or flight response. And I explain this in the dismantle section of the course if you want to see all the symptoms associated with each state. But then you've got fight or flight response, and then you've got moderate trauma, which is where you can feel dissociated and fight or flight response. And then you've got severe trauma, which is where fight or flight symptoms shut off and you just feel completely dissociated and numb. So those are the states, right? So on one end, you've got totally calm, and then on the other end, you've got totally dissociated, right? So we understand that what determines if we enter these states is dependent upon how we respond to various stressors in our lives. So that's why I talk about having the mentality of a superhero in the course. Um, is because you have to have this mentality of a superhero that, okay, I've got this villain, which are the symptoms in these different states, the symptoms and the states, right? That's the villain. But as a superhero, I realize that it's my job to keep trying different strategies until I find the weakness of the villain, which we know that the weakness of these villains is the state, changing our state. The symptoms are not the villains. The symptoms are actually good, right? If I was fighting a tiger, it'd be nice to have fight or flight response active. And then if I couldn't fight or flee from the tiger, and the tiger is carrying me to the tiger's den to eat me for lunch, and there's 30 tigers waiting, it would be great to go into a traumatized state and to feel numb and disconnected, to feel depersonalized and derealized, right? So the symptoms that we hate so much are not the problem. The problem is that we're in a state in an inappropriate we're in the how do I say this? We're in the wrong state. All right. If there's no physical danger, we shouldn't be in a stressful state, a fight or flight state, or a traumatized state. We should be in a calm state. Right. So we need to change our strategy, which is instead of obsessing about all the symptoms associated with these states, we instead focus on getting to a calm state. Right. So that's simplified. So you don't have to fear living with these symptoms associated with these states if you can learn to change your state. Change your state, change your life, right? Uh, get out of the state that you're in, and you'll get out of the symptoms that you're experiencing, right? Okay. First question: is it normal to still question yourself? She said during recovery, is it still normal to question yourself if DPDR is still present frequently? Asking, is this weird? Does he or she look weird? Is this real? These thoughts freak me out and make me anxious. But at the same time, your rational brain is thinking, yeah, like this is crazy. Like I'm fine is what you're saying. Yes, that's very normal. That's very, very, very normal. That in fact, that is textbook part of dissociative symptoms is questioning reality. That's derealization. You're questioning existence because you feel so disconnected from the material world. So, um, yeah, or depersonalization, you feel disconnected from your body. And you look in the mirror and you feel like you're looking at a stranger. You also may feel emotionally numb to pain. All those things are, yeah, that's very normal and appropriate for a traumatized state. Um, and I know the thoughts freak you out, make you anxious. So you said, how do you combat these thoughts? Do they start to fade? They will fade when you get out of a traumatized state, right? Again, it's our default setting to assume that because these symptoms are so uncomfortable, that the symptoms must be the problem. But that's like looking at car exhaust smoke and saying, how do we get that car exhaust smoke to stop? We've got to get this smoke to stop because it's it's dirty, it's smelly, right? It's just very uncomfortable. But then we spend weeks, months, or years trying to get rid of this exhaust smoke, and we realize we're not getting anywhere. And then somebody walks up and says, "Hey, how you?" I'm going to use my Arkansas accent because I'm from Arkansas, and this is what half the people at my high school sounded like. Hi, have you tried turning off the keys to the ignition? Have you tried turning off them keys and just turn that engine off? If you turn that engine off, that exhaust smoke will just automatically shut off too. Right? Is anybody laughing? Nobody's laughing. I think that accent was kind of funny. But, and you're like, oh, wait a second. I've been spending all this time trying to get rid of this exhaust smoke when the whole time the actual problem was that the engine was started, right? So when it comes to your negative thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, don't try to overcome those things because they're appropriate for certain states that we enter into. Get out of the state, turn off the engine, which is your nervous system. Learn to calm your nervous system, and thus those symptoms that you don't like, the negative thoughts, emotions, and behaviors will self correct. Just like exhaust smoke in a car will automatically turn off when you turn off the engine. Okay. Okay, Erica, what's up, Erica? I just signed up and haven't started the course yet, but do you have any advice for what to do when having a DPDR episode while driving? Okay, very good question. Well, first of all, Erica, welcome to the course. Very, very good to have you. I'm proud of you for signing up for this. And you will recover from what you're going through. So, when driving, so the reason why it's really, really tough to and by the way, Allie, that would end your question, by the way, and I hope that helps you. So real quick, Erica, I have a video on YouTube where I talk about driving anxiety. In the short term, temporarily to just quickly get you into a calmer place when driving, wear sunglasses. All right, because that's going to limit the amount of of senses that you're taking in, of sensory input that you're taking in. Because whenever you enter a stressful state or a fight or flight state, your pupils dilate, and thus you're taking in a lot more of your surroundings, right? And thus it's easier to feel more overwhelmed because you're taking in a lot more input, sensory input than normal. So whenever you put on sunglasses, it limits the amount of sensory input that can come in, right? And that's whether you're experiencing depersonalization, derealization, or sensory overload, or just any stress symptoms at all while driving. That's gonna help you. All right. It's like a band-aid. It's going to be, temporary as far as that doesn't get to the root of the problem, but it helps. Another thing that will help in temporarily, Erica, is if you listen to music while driving. All right, especially music that has like nostalgia associated with it, music that you listen to it and it takes you back to a time where you were like totally like having fun and calm. All right, so do that. The third thing, and I know this is going to sound a little corny, but move your body, dance to the music. All right, because whenever you're stressed and you're like driving, like, oh no, this sucks, like I've been there 1,000 times. I used to have bad driving anxiety too, right? You're tensing your body. That's going to send a signal to your nervous system that there must be some sort of threat. Thus, you enter into a stressful state, even a traumatized state. Whenever you're dancing, whoop, loosey goosey, like a limp noodle, you're just having a good time, having fun, dancing to the music. y- Because you're changing what you're doing with your physiology, it's going to change the signal that's being sent to your nervous system, right? So that's part of how you can shift your body uh, whenever you're driving. So that's the short term. All right, that's how you can quickly. Sorry, I'm starting to cramp. That's how you can quickly feel better while you're driving, Erica. Now, in the long term, for driving anxiety, you have to see it as a phobia, all right? Which a phobia just simply means that it's something that you have a anxious association with, okay? I'm not necessarily saying that this is a phobia for you, but I'm saying nonetheless, if you experience anxiety every time you drive, there's a good chance that you have a subconscious association, excuse me, of of anxiety related to that. So you would treat driving anxiety the way that you would treat any phobia, which would be you have to recondition yourself to not associate driving with anxiety. And the way that you do that is you have to retrain your brain and your nervous system. Okay. How do you do that? The ABC technique, which you just signed up for the course, it's the very first pillar. I have a series of videos where I talk about what's called procedural memories, which is basically we create these subconscious responses. I talk about how to calm your body, and I go over the ABC technique, which you can use anywhere and everywhere. It's very, very quick, very, very effective for calming yourself. And you have to learn to calm your body because that's also going to calm your nervous system and also calm your brain. Okay, calm your mind. So you have to recondition yourself with a calm, peaceful response to driving, which is going to take time. Okay, especially if it's been a while that you've built up this procedural memory that anytime I drive and I'm exposed to a certain stressor, I need to stress out. You give yourself time, all right? But yeah, use the ABC technique. Another thing that quickly influences the nervous system is visualization. All right, and there's one more thing I'm going to tell you after this, but visualization. Before you get into the car, Erica, I want you to spend even just 30 seconds, all right, even 10 seconds, any time at all will help. And I want you to visualize yourself driving in the car, dancing to In Sync, all right, Backstreet Boys, right? Right? I don't know why I said those bands, but you're everybody, yeah, rock your body. Okay, anyway, nobody's laughing right now. But you visualize yourself having a great time, and whenever you play that movie, it's just the same as if you were driving. Because I talked about this earlier in the thing, whatever we're doing right now, and the monthly call. But I talked about how our amygdala in our brain is taking in sensory input through our five senses, and then how we respond to in our body to those senses is what determines whether our amygdala sends a peaceful signal to our nervous system or a stress signal that, hey, it's time to activate stress, fight or flight, or a traumatized state. So whenever you visualize, you're playing this mental movie, you're taking in, and if you can even imagine that you're hearing the song that's playing in the car, and you see the road and you see all the stuff that's around you when you're driving, and then you calm your body while you're visualizing, you do deep breathing, you do progressive muscle relaxation, guess what? Your nervous system and your brain has no idea that you're not actually driving, right? So we can recondition our brain and nervous system to not respond with fear and anxiety toward these certain things without even having to enter into these specific situations, right? Visualization is a very, very powerful thing. It's just like when you watch a scary movie. Have you ever watched a scary movie and you feel yourself sweating and shaking and you're like freaking out? Why? It's because your nervous system doesn't, your brain and your nervous system don't realize that that's a movie, right? Because of how you're responding to it, right? So, visualization. The third thing that I suggest for you, Erica, and I saw that Felicia is saying bye. Thank you so much for your advice. You're precious, and yes, your jokes are funny. Well, thank you. Gosh, nobody's ever laughed at my jokes, Felicia. Thank you so much. I've so enjoyed your comments, your questions, Felicia. You're amazing. Keep pressing on. You are going to overcome what you're going through, and I'm very, very proud and excited for you. Erica, the last thing, and then after this, I've got one more question, and then we're gonna jump off here. Um, Change your what if question. Okay, we don't realize it, but we spend a lot of time asking a negative what if question. All right. And it's oftentimes subconscious. We say, what if this bad thing happens? What if I'm driving and then I have a panic attack? Or what if I'm driving and I get anxious or feel dissociated? Or what if I'm around this thing and this thing and I feel these symptoms? And whenever you ask that what if question, you're actually, it can happen very quick, but you're actually visualizing a negative scenario. And whatever we visualize, our nervous system is going to believe that that's a reality. And we can actually, over time, train our brain and nervous system to have these fear based responses to things for the mere fact that we're asking this negative what if question and we're entertaining all these negative scenarios as if they've already happened. Right. This is how the stress cycle a lot of times starts is we're just saying, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? We visualize a negative scenario. We respond with stress in our body, and then we create all of these stressful associations. All right. So instead, Erica, I want you to say this. What if I drive and I'm totally calm? What if I drive and I do what Jordan says and I'm dancing to the music, right? Everything's going great and it's amazing. And what if this phobia completely goes away? And this doesn't just work with phobias. Change your what if question in general, right? If you're fearing that you'll never overcome, thank you so much. It's good seeing you. Uh, Take care. Amir, I think that's what it was. So, dude, you were so awesome. This is so cool to have you. But anyway, in general, change your what if question. Figure out the what is the question that you're asking yourself every single day. You know, and a lot of times it's very negative. You know, I didn't realize that I was asking a negative what if question for years. You know, what if I don't succeed in life? What if this happens to my loved ones? Or what if I always experience this negative thing? It's like that that one question, whatever your what if question is determining the quality of your life in ways that you would never imagine. And if you can start to change your what if question and also visualize success, visualize peace, happiness, the things that you want, you would be surprised. So, in summary, Erica, you know, wear sunglasses, dance to music. That's going to be temporary relief. Calm your body, use the ABC technique, visualize yourself for just 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds before you drive of having fun, being calm. Also, change your what if question. All right. What if I drive and I'm totally calm and everything's great? And, you know, if you do any one of those things, it's going to help. But especially if you do all those things, and it just takes a few seconds, your driving anxiety and phobia will leave. Right. Okay. Good question, Erica. And I'm so glad that you got the course. And if you have any questions, ask it on the forum and I'm here for you. Okay. Okay, guys, this has to be my last question. I appreciate each and all of you. You're amazing. Okay, Erica said, limp noodle driving. I'll try that. You should trademark that phrase. Thank you. I feel like I just got more thorough advice from that one answer than I got from years of therapy. Oh, Erica, you are too kind. Well, you know, the thing about it, guys, is, you know, I'll give one comment. I love mental health professionals to death. I mean, they're like, I mean, you have to have a real heart for people to do what they do in the long term. Um, and generally speaking, they're all fantastic people that genuinely want to help people. But the problem with talk therapy is stress and trauma are non-cognitive phenomena. They're not going to be influenced that much by words and thoughts. They can be if we have associations with our body, calm associations with certain words and thoughts. We think those things, we say these things, and then the byproduct is we calm our body. Yes. But just saying something or just thinking something whenever it comes to stress and trauma, it's not going to do a whole lot. We have to do things that influence our nervous system, calming the body, right? Because our nervous system is responding to the state of our body in the present moment. All right. Our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are the byproduct of whatever state our body is in the present moment. All right. That flies in the face of almost everything that you're going to hear in modern psychotherapy. They focus most of the time on trying to correct the thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, but yet the person's nervous system is still responding with all of these symptoms because they haven't changed their state. Right. So, I actually know a former psychiatrist, and he left actually. Um, but I've learned a lot from him, and he basically says that most mental health professionals. I can't say most. I don't know this to be true. This is just what he said. But a lot of them are working off of very antiquated methodologies to treat stress, depression, trauma, stuff like that. And because of that, a lot of people they may feel a little bit better, but they don't get to the root cause, and thus they have to keep coming back, right? Like I do coaching and stuff. I do men's life coaching. I tell the men that I work with, I don't want to have more than one session. All right, I may have a second session, but the truth is, it doesn't take more than an hour or two to give you everything you need to get out of stress or trauma. Right now, that's because I'm empowering the people I work with, whether it be in the course, YouTube, or coaching, with tools that they can apply. And that is going to take time. I'm not saying it takes a couple hours to recover from stress and trauma, but I'm saying if you self empower people and show them how powerful they are, and if you show them that they are the hero that they've been waiting for, they've been looking for a therapist or a pill or a doctor or some magical thing. And the whole time they are the answer to their own problems. They have the power to change their state. That doesn't take very long to teach people that. And once you show them that they have this amazing built-in power to process a traumatic state, to get out of a stressful fight or flight state, to remain calm, it's amazing what it does to people. And for me, it totally changed my life. And I wish I would have been taught it as a child, to be honest with you. I'm 29 years old, and it was just the last couple years that I learned most of this stuff that I'm telling you. So yeah, so I definitely understand, Erica. So I'm so glad that you found this course. I'm so glad that you were able to watch this. Okay, last question, guys, and then I got to jump off here. Okay, Zachary Robinson. Thought I'd put out a question now. It's been a year since the start of my chronic depersonalization, although it's a lot less than it was. Yay, that's good. It has been many months with utter torture and being on the verge of suicide. Oh, dude, I'm so sorry about that. Sorry to hear about that. I'm getting more back into work now, but I'm concerned about the subject matter involved, which is public relations and media. Inevitably, I'm dealing with a lot of big ideas, big stories, all within hectic and heated environments. It's exhausting at the best of times, and this experience has made me feel as this might have been the worst career for me. After constantly saying I've wasted my life and chosen the wrong career path, I've realized that I do have a great interest in what I do, and it's also what I'm good at. Despite this, my anxiety is very cruel at allowing me to achieve balance. In many ways, I want to live a more simple life, as it angers me that my own nature won't settle for anything but the crazy life. I know this is a lot, but any advice you'd have might help me progress through this uh, and be appreciated a lot. Zachary, that's a great question. And I actually have approached this situation quite a bit in my coachings, where somebody will, they're either in college. A lot of college kids uh, are getting into traumatized states, which could be just due to school stress, social pressures, drugs, of course. But anyway, and then they worry, okay, well, I had to reduce my hours at college, and I can't even cope well with college, or they've graduated college and they've just entered a job based on what they went to school for, and they're basically thinking, how am I going to work this job, right? It stresses me out. I can't do it in this state. Okay, so here's my advice. Ultimately, you are the master of your own life, all right? So you have to make the decision of what's most healthy for you, okay? And ultimately, if if you're really, really concerned, seek out a doctor, seek out a mental health professional for such a big decision like that as far as career, especially a mental health professional. While I have my opinions about stress and trauma, and unless they specialize in trauma, a lot of them are going to give you stuff that it's not going to work in the long term. But when it comes to just being able to get things off your chest, talk about it, make wise decisions, the mental health professionals is going to be fantastic. All right. And I also want to clarify, I'm not saying that there are not many mental health professionals that do specialize in stress and trauma and do use modern ways of approaching this stuff that are fantastic, but unfortunately, it seems to be the exception, not the rule. So, but my advice for you is number one, it's such a big decision. I'm always careful. I would need to know more about your specific situation, probably, but I don't want to say that this is going to be for everybody. But you need to know this, Zach. It's 100% possible to remain calm despite the stressors that are involved with that career. Okay. And I said this earlier in this, but there's no such thing as a stressful job, right? And I clarified earlier, doesn't mean that there are not certain jobs that promote more challenges, right? And ultimately, there are jobs that are not healthy for us, even if we weren't in a stressful or traumatized state. But ultimately, what makes a job overwhelming and very, very stressful is our response to it. All right. So if we've got a job that, or a career, you could say, where we know that if we were in a calm state, we would be able to handle what are currently overwhelming stressors, then that's where I would encourage you to stick it out and learn to shift your state, right? Learn to recondition yourself to not respond with being overwhelmed and stressed whenever this job throws different stressors at you. And that's 100% possible. Now, I'll also say that if it's a job that even if you weren't in a stressful state or a traumatized state, it still would be totally overwhelming, that is not the career for you. All right. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I worked at a call center for a while, and and it was back to back to back to back calls, and it was related to filing warranty claims. Right, people would buy like a Xbox at Walmart, they'd get a protection plan, they'd call in. All right, and I actually learned to cope pretty well with anxiety while I was there. I didn't know any of the stuff that I knew now. This is like 4 or 5 years ago, but yet I still was relatively calm. But nonetheless, because it was just constant, 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 there was literally no break. Well, there was like 2 15-minute breaks, but as far as whenever I was working, back to back calls, I realized that, you know what, that's not a healthy work environment. And the people that were running, and also my commission check was based upon a survey that people took, and they asked questions about the protection plan that had nothing to do with me. And I got held accountable for that. I had to have a certain QA score to get my incentive money each month. I know this is boring, nobody cares, but the customer would answer questions and say, I hate the plan. Well, that would count negatively against me. So I felt out of control, like I was doing amazing. Actually, I was like number one in the company, and there was like 500 people that worked there as far as stats. But it was just, I had to I kind of had to adjust things, and it was just really difficult. And I realized, you know what, I'm not going to be at a career where I'm not in control of my own destiny, where I'm not empowered to do what I need to do, and where I'm held accountable for things that I have no control over, and it affects me financially. I'm also not going to be at, sorry, I'm also not going to be at a job where I'm constantly stressed and I never get a break ever, right? Because even if I wasn't in a stressful or traumatized state or whatever, that's still not healthy. So the question that you need to ask yourself, Zach, is let's say that you were like Gandhi, right? Or you were Jesus or Buddha or whoever you want to think about that lived not even more than that. Also, imagine if you were as calm as you could possibly be, and you were in a calm state all the time, and you learned to cope with all these stressors that this job was throwing at you. Would you be able to handle the job? Because if you could, then I would say stick it out. All right, as tough as it is, I would say this is a fantastic opportunity to learn to self-regulate, to learn how to calm yourself. And ultimately, regardless of whatever career that we have, it's going to involve stressors, it's going to involve challenges, and thus we need to have the ability to self-regulate, which means that we can calm ourselves. So yeah, so it if this job would be stressful even if you weren't in a stressed out and stressful state, or a stressed out and traumatized state, and stressful and overwhelming to the point that it wouldn't be fun, you wouldn't enjoy it, then you're wasting your time even trying to pursue that. And I don't know how old are you? I don't know how old you are, but listen, bro, I've I went to a theological school, all right, for 3 years, okay? And the school ended up closing down, okay? And my degree means absolutely nothing now. I also went to welding school for a year, and uh whenever I graduated, or whenever I signed up for that school, they told me that I was going to be making like $30 an hour and they'd help me find a job. They didn't help me find a job. And this is whenever Obama had shut down the construction industry pretty much and all the pipelines. So I didn't have a job. And I thought that that was like my career. That was what I was going to do. And I've had lots of jobs that I thought were going to be careers, and I went to school to make careers and it didn't work out. But yet, you need to understand this, bro. Like, I'm assuming that just by the way that you talk, and like, unless you're like 80 like, or 90, like, you still got time, my man. Like we have this pressure that we have to have everything figured out by the age of 20 or whatever. It's like you can go to school for something and it not be the best career, and you go to school for something else and change your career, or you get a different job. It's okay. It's all right. Like that's okay. It's happened to me. I'm 29 years old and I'm just now doing what I think that I'm on this ninja@gmail.com, and I will remind you. And then if you want to be taken off that list, just go ahead and let me know, because there's a lot of people that have taken my course that have recovered and they don't want to be reminded of DPDR at all. And I get that. So I'm not going to send out the mass email anymore. So yeah, email me if you want to be on the list. But if not, you just each month go to the first video and it'll show the date. And then also about 5 minutes before these sessions, I'll go in there and post the link to the live Q&A. All right, guys, this is amazing. I love you. And yeah, we will talk to you all soon. Until next month, hang in there. You're going to overcome this.